Hi everyone, and welcome to the Wings of Resilience webinar series, proudly brought to you by Drought Angels, the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund, and the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation. Allow me to introduce myself. My name's Mitch Witherington, and I'm the General Manager for Drought Angels. The team and I are always on the lookout for new ways to support our Aussie farmers and supporters like you through the tough times. A common question we hear through natural disasters, whether that be drought or floods or fires or plagues, is how do our Aussie farmers find the strength to keep pushing through? So with that question in mind, we have curated this 3-part webinar series to equip you and our farmers with some tools and techniques to help you through the tough times and find joy in the everyday. To MC today's webinar series, we've invited back our good friend, Lou McGregor from Finding Yellow. So Lou, I'll hand it over to you to introduce and welcome our guest for today.
Thanks so much, Mitch, and welcome back everyone online today and who watched the first part of our series with Kirk last week. I'm very excited to be here today with this amazing lady that you may have seen on 60 Minutes or various national shows. She's got such an incredible story, and I'm so excited that we've got a whole 1 hour with this amazing lady. I would also like to say, please feel free. This is your webinar, so shoot through any questions. I get them all sent through to me on a feed here, so shoot them through and we can ask them and answer them for you as we go along. But now I'm going to introduce you to this amazing lady. A lot of you, or if you don't know, would have known her as a Bali bomb survivor. She's an incredible woman, a motivation speaker, coach, trainer, author. So please welcome today, Carren Smith.
Hi, everybody. What a treat to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's amazing to be a part of this series. And
it's great to have you here, Carren. And where are you calling from today?
So I am up on the Sunshine Coast in my hometown, just near Mooloolaba. It's lovely and sunny up here today, and I'm really, really thrilled to be able to support our farmers and support the people that are watching and tuning in to today's webinar, because I'm excited about the concept of resilience for so many of us. And here on the Sunshine Coast, it's no different. So thank you for having me.
That is amazing. Well, before we launch into all the big, deep stuff, we just want to know a little bit about you yourself. So you're calling from the Sunshine Coast. Is that home for you? Where were you born?
That is home for me, but I was born in South Africa. I'm actually from the capital of South Africa. I'm from Pretoria. We came here when I was 7, and all of my immediate family live here in Australia, but all of my cousins, aunties and uncles still live back in South Africa, and they're scattered through Durban, Joburg and Pretoria.
Fantastic. But you consider yourself an Aussie girl now?
Well, I have been here for 45 years, so I'd say yes.
Yes. Well, I think that's close enough. That's fantastic.
I think I just revealed my age, didn't I?
No, that's fine. That's fine. So, Carren, you've got so many, I guess, titles and credits to your name, and we're going to go back about your story and got you there first. But I'd love to hear first about what you love the most about your business and maybe any outstanding moments that have stuck out for you and stayed with you.
Wow, what a question. I love my business because I get to take my own traumas and my own experiences and translate that into something that makes the world a better place. I have this deep understanding for myself that our experiences don't occur just for us. I feel like our experiences occur on behalf of mankind. And for those of us who feel like we can share those experiences, then hopefully we can make the load a little lighter for those that are going through their own suffering. So that's the part that I love the most about my business, is that it's never about the money and it's never about how good I look. It's more about how my life gets to make an impact and have meaning because either way I'm landing up in a box at the end of the day. So it's, the quality of the experience. It's the quality of the experience while I'm here.
That's amazing. And I want to talk to you about, for those viewers who don't know, and if you don't mind, I know you've shared this story a million times before, but I think we need to hear it to get the full understanding of your journey. But can you tell us about that night in 2002 of the Bali bombing? What were you doing there? Why were you there? And what happened?
So, forgive me in the short space of time that we have. My intention is not that it sounds flippant in any way. I was in Bali because my partner had taken his life the year before. On the 14th of October 2001, my partner of 8 years, Greg, committed suicide. And I never saw it coming. I was completely oblivious. To me, he was a tower of strength. He was this strong, silent, extraordinary man. And I looked up to him for his honesty and his authenticity. If there was something wrong, you always knew. He didn't keep any secrets, but this one he kept profoundly. So on the 14th of October, he took his life, and I felt enormous responsibility. Our relationship was struggling. He was in the movie industry. And we had been going through a bit of a rough time, but I always thought that we would come out the other side of it. I never thought that was the end of us. When he took his life, it sent me down a very slippery slope of responsibility and guilt. And I had to look at his family and his friends and my family and my friends. And I felt like the whole thing that we were all suffering for was because of me. So I shouldered that weight. And that sent me down my own suicidal path of depression. So much so that on the anniversary of his 12-month anniversary, I'd made a decision that I would take my own life for a number of reasons that made enormous sense to me. That I would be back in my rightful place with him. I would have paid my price for the evil that I had done to him that cost him his life. And I would also be providing relief to everybody that was here watching me walking around like the living dead. So I decided I was going to Bali, and my best friend Jody and another girlfriend, Charmaine, decided that they would join me. And we landed in Bali on the 12th of October, 2002. And in my mind, my sinister plan was going to come to fruition on the 14th of October. So I had 2 days to land, assimilate, and then I was going to go into the mountains in Ubud, where I would be by myself. And as life would have it, the night we landed was...
Can I ask you, Carren, did your friends know this at the time?
No, and this is something that I've discovered over the years, that those that are a real danger to themselves, and I just want to encourage everybody listening, like if there's anybody you know, please get onto Lifeline straight away that could be suffering like this. But those that are in danger, the ones that are the greatest mime artists, you'd never know. And they had no idea. And I was so disassociated from reality. I had no concept that what I was about to put my friends and family through was the same thing I was going through. It never occurred to me. It just never occurred to me. So when we landed in Bali, we went to the Sari Club that night. And we were all standing around, Jody, Charmaine and myself. The bomb went off at about 11:30. I had no idea it was a bomb. I was on the dance floor, and I was blown backwards to what I later discovered was a pit, and all of the bodies landed on top of me, which is what saved me, because the roof then collapsed on top of all of the bodies and began to burn its way down. When I came out of, because I was unconscious at the time of the blast, when I came back, I got myself out from underneath all of the bodies, and finally got myself into a hospital with an amazing rescue from this Australian guy called Jeff Smithers. He pitched me up off the side of the street and said that I was in trouble and I needed to get myself to a hospital. So he took me on his moped, and we discovered that the left side of my skull was completely crushed in, and I didn't have a clue that that was what had occurred. I couldn't feel anything. I received 38 staples from here to here with no anesthetic And I didn't feel anything, but I heard the sound. And I think that's the bit that I never forget. But it was, you know, you can't even begin to I can't articulate the scene that was present that night of the bombing. It was horrific. But what else was present there was a very palpable coming together of people where everybody united. No one was scared of each other. I sat with a couple of people who passed away. I wasn't scared. All I felt was this intense sense of connection to humanity, and it was real. Eventually I got myself home and was operated on, discovered that both Jodie and Charmaine had in fact been killed. Their bodies flew home in the December, but in parts. Now, in my mind, I was convinced that they were okay because Jodie and I were like soul sisters. You know, she would sneeze and I would blow my nose. And I could feel her, and I could feel that she was fine. I knew it. But as it turns out, that wasn't the case. And, you know, I then took probably 6 or 7 years of a lot of therapy and a lot of work to reconcile what had occurred. To get myself to the point of recognizing that I'd gone to Bali to take my own life, yet I was the only one who came home. Wow. And how is that fair? How is that real? How does that happen? And I've got an amazing father, and my dog that I had for 15 years passed away, and I rang him and I said, Daddy. I call my dad Daddy, and he calls me Buffy. And he said to him, Daddy, I said, I just don't know what to do. And he came around, and I was 36, and he said, Buffy, come and sit on Daddy's lap. Daddy tell you a story. And he said to me, I want you to think about the humble little caterpillar going about life thinking he's amazing because he can bulldoze over a blade of grass. He said, but then life takes over and instinct occurs and he begins to spin his chrysalis. And in that chrysalis, he liquefies and he devours himself and he completely transforms. And in his little mind, whatever's left of it, he thinks that's the worst time of his life. He said, but it's not. He said, that is not the fight of his life. He said, the fight of his life is the transformation into the butterfly. But then to be able to break free of the chrysalis. And he said, no one can help him because if anybody cuts that chrysalis, they'll either cut his wing or he won't build the strength in his wings to get a whole new perspective on life. And my dad said to me, Buffy, he said, you can't change what's occurred. And he said, and everyone would agree it was the worst experience. But he said, that is not the fight of your life. The fight of your life is to become extraordinary like that butterfly so that you can see the world with the wind underneath your wings rather than a caterpillar with your belly dragging on the ground. And he said, that is going to be the fight of your life. He said, are you up for it? And I, at the time, was I was bawling, but you know, I got it. I totally understood the message in the story for him that he was telling me was that my experience could break me and I would never get the shift in perspective of the wind underneath my wings, seeing life differently, which would then make my experiences purposeful. If I didn't fight for that, I'd be destroyed. And that was the fight of my life. And my dad was spot on. That was so spot on. And it was the story that I needed to hear at the right time that made me begin to see it differently. And that perhaps, yes, I was the only one who came home, but perhaps I've been given a second chance. Yeah. And if I've been given a second chance, what am I going to do with that? Because I can't lie in bed crying about it, feeling sorry for myself. I've got to be this extraordinary butterfly. I've got to get that wind underneath my wings. I've got to see life from a different perspective and then do something massive with it. And that's when I decided to become a speaker.
That's incredible. I'm sitting here quite stunned, and it's such a lot to, I guess, take in and comprehend. And I'm sure for everyone watching now, it's, you know, there's so many elements of that story, and it's devastating. And what you've been through is, you know, you wouldn't wish that upon anyone. But I want to go back a little bit because I think it's something that you talk about, and I think it's something that a lot of our listeners can relate to. And that was, you talk about responsibility and that level of the burden that you felt when Greg took his life, and that for some reason you took that to become your responsibility and your fault, and that was so overwhelming that you wanted to end your own life because of that. And do you think that's in your journey, in your experience with coaches and people that have almost had this imposter syndrome or this fear of, it didn't happen to me, so I'm the one that needs to pay the price? Have you experienced that much in your coaching?
I have, and I've put it down to a very innate connection to being the center of the universe that we all hold. If you think of a child, the child growing up is the center of the universe, and they know it. If parents divorce while a kid is young, the kid will always think that it was their fault. Yeah. Because they see themselves as the center of the universe. So we actually have to reason with the child and say, actually, no, you're the glue that's kept us together, but it's got nothing to do with you. It's just that we can't get along, So we can reason with children if we catch it. But that innate understanding and connection to us being the center of the universe actually never leaves us, no matter how old we are, because it is innate and it's part of a survival mechanism. So when we see something occur outside of ourselves that, my partner committing suicide, instantly it's innate. It's not conscious. It's innate that I would go, wow, that absolutely is my fault because I'm the closest person to him. Yeah. And if anybody was going to see this, it was going to be me, and I missed it. What's wrong with me? I'm the fool. I'm the insignificant, and I'm the insufficient one. I must now pay a price because I haven't fulfilled my role as a proper human being here. In fact, I've completely ruined somebody's life, and not just him taking his life, but I've ruined his entire family. Right. So it's an innate relationship to everything happening because of us. Then it's natural, I think. But common sense does prevail over time if a person does the work.
So how do you, if anyone's going through that now, and I guess there are different variants of responsibility, yours is extreme and potentially one of the worst things that can happen to people. But, we've got farmers on board looking at this now. And I guess for a lot of them, there's that responsibility of, how do we keep going with this? And we're responsible for our families. We're responsible for the community. We're responsible for the people in the city and the food that lands on their table, because without us, how do they get that? So what tools have you used? When did that realization come for you that, it's not all about you, but what can I do to make the best of a worse situation? And where I can be useful, not having this sense of, I don't want to call it self-pity because it's not, it's deeper than that, but you know what I mean? Like that I'm not useful. Like your dad said, you can lie in bed and cry, or you can get on and do something. How do people do that? What tools do you do to do that?
So, I think that when we think of the world outside of ourselves, and the responsibility that we have for the community, and especially for our farmers, and I 100% get the magnitude of the ripple effect that they create. However, when we take on that level of responsibility in that way, it's self-destructive. And I know you were searching for the word there. It's not self-pity, and it isn't. It's actually self-destruction. Yeah. Because we almost feel that we have a price to pay if we don't get it right. So then we go into the self-destruction mode, and we use the community, the people, the families, the world, the country. We use all of those as reasons why we're in self-destruction mode. As a tool to arrest that thought process it's really bringing yourself back to your own center of your own universe and allowing everybody else to be the center of their own universe without having to think that I have to be responsible for your universe. Yes, I might create a ripple effect in there, but I'm not responsible for it. And if I play my part, if I do my bit, then your bit will take care of itself. I just have to do my bit. I just have to bring that big view of all of the suffering that we're causing everybody else that is self-destructive, bring your view back in to just the self and what's in front of you right now. Just do that.
Right.
And what's in front of you right now, just do that. And what's in front of you right now, just do that. And sometimes you're doing that on a moment by moment basis. Sometimes it's a day by day. Sometimes it's hour by hour. For myself, I kept myself simply addressing what was in front of me in the present moment. And I was living in the moment for years simply because the thought of looking at what tomorrow was going to bring was so debilitating that it made the depression unbearable, therefore the slippery slope of a suicidal depression. So it was about bringing my life, back into my skin bag and looking at what I could do inside of my skin bag, and then allow everything else to create its own natural ripple effect, which is how it works anyway. But when our thoughts let go, then it becomes problematic.
So in that, you said 6-7 years after Bali that you went through this dark, I guess it's that rebuilding, that real building period, and you had to find your own ways and focus on moments one in front of the other. During that time, were there specific people that you reached out to? Did you find that last week on our webinar session, we had the lovely Kirk Reynolds, and one of the things that he said was to talk to people that have walked a mile in your shoes, to go to the people who understand, not that anyone can really understand what it is you're going through, but did you find that experience? Did you have certain people that those were the ones you went through to help you through that period?
Look, I agree that people should go and talk to other people who've been through it. And I have clients that work with me because of what I've been through. So I'm all about that. For myself, however, that wasn't my choice. I didn't have the shoulders to hear anybody else's story. Right. Mine was so personally difficult to wade through that if I had to be in the company of anybody else that was suffering, it was too much for me.
Okay.
And so that was just my experience, though. But now I strongly agree. Go and talk to people who've been through it before. Talk to people, be with people who have experienced, all of our suffering comes wrapped in different packages, but it all feels the same. So, even though I've been blown up and gone through suicide, it feels the same as somebody who's gone bankrupt or somebody who's lost a loved one. It feels the same. And I think that on one hand, it's kind of what unites us is our ability to be resilient, bouncing forward, though, not bouncing back. I feel like we can share how we have overcome with each other. And I think that is where, this really real potency is.
Yeah. That's
in our experiences, Yeah.
Can you remember a time at the end, I guess, of that 6-year period where you maybe have woken up one day and gone, I'm good. Or I don't know if that's a word, but I'm ready. I'm ready for something more now. I've shifted. I've got through the trenches and I feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Was there any of those moments or?
Definitely. There were. It didn't happen, and that sounds so beautiful, and I wish that was my experience. It was just one day and I went, woohoo, I'm ready. But what had what actually happened for me? It was little small tastes. It
Yeah.
was like a little tapas before the main meal. So I got little snacks of, oh my God, I feel really good about this. And oh my goodness, look at me. And I remember, I remember so clearly, we were sitting in a restaurant and I was with my now husband, Matt, and somebody popped a champagne cork. And normally if I heard a champagne cork, I would run a mile because it's that, the banging.
Yeah.
And somebody popped a champagne cork and I didn't run. I heard it, I felt the stir, but I sat and I finished my dinner. And when I got home, I was like, oh my God, did you see me? Like, I'm a legend. And then the next time was a car backfired at the front of our house. And I just saw it as a car backfiring. And then we went to the movies, and I would never go to the movies because it was a confined space.
Right.
And I thought, I'm just going to test it out because I think it was, I can't remember what movie it was on, maybe Mission Impossible or another Matrix, one of my favorites. So I went to the movies and I didn't lose myself. I was able to hold myself in the movies. And then it was little snacks like that until one day I woke up and went, oh, I can feel my wings. I can feel my wings. Wow. I'm here. And that was when I really stepped into growing this business, public events, getting on stage for 25,000 people. Like I just took off like a rocket. And
so what was your first step into that? Like, I'm assuming you didn't step straight onto a stage of 20,000 people.
Oh, no.
What was your first that you can remember, like the first speaking gig as coach?
Do I have to tell you? It's so cringy.
Yes.
It's so bad.
Well, that's even better. Now we really want to know.
Well, I remember I had just read a couple of books on how to speak, and there was a woman who ran a networking group who allowed me to go and speak for her members.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped up on the stage, I began telling my story, and I bawled my eyes out the whole way through the story, got off the stage, the audience was bawling, I was bawling. And, it was probably maybe 10 years maybe 7 years after the bombing that I started speaking. So it was still very raw for Australians.
Yeah.
And after 3 or 4 of those, she actually said to me, you're not very good at this, and I think you're going to have to give it away. So I took that on board and I gave it away for 18 months. But then I invested a lot of money in myself. I became a master trainer in NLP. I flew around the world learning from some of the most extraordinary speaker trainers and came back and practiced and practiced and practiced. And so my commitment to myself was 90 speaking engagements a year.
90.
And from that day to this, is probably I don't think I've missed a number yet. And some years it's actually a lot more than that. So at the moment, I think I'm Australia's most experienced speaker. I've just delivered my 4,223rd presentation last Tuesday.
That's amazing.
I know, and I feel like I've only just started, Lou. I feel like a kid in a candy store. But no, it was definitely a bumpy ride. It was incredibly ugly, and I was so bad at it. But I had enough jelly beans to make me push through, because I knew that my experience had to make a difference for people. Otherwise, what was the purpose of me being here?
Yeah.
And that was what, and still does, drive me every day. It's all about the impact, and it's all about the contribution.
About your motivation.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I guess it's that thing you said, it is investing in yourself. But I think you've got to have that belief in yourself. It's the chicken and the egg. You've got to have that belief in yourself in the first place. Is there one particular speaking gig that you've done, or one audience member that comes to mind for you that stands out?
Yeah. Actually, yes. I was speaking for 25,000 people in LA, and it was the biggest audience I'd ever spoken for. I was unbelievably excited. I was sharing the stage with people that I've looked up to for years. And when I got on stage, I gave away a copy of my book, Soul Survivor. And as I held the book up to say, I'm giving these away. If you want one, come and get it. And a man, and the lights were in my eyes. I couldn't see the stage. But the next thing I remember seeing was a man had run from wherever he was sitting in the audience. He had run and tried to leap onto the stage to grab the book. And he face planted straight onto the stage and landed with a bloodied nose at my feet. Oh my God. And so I gave him 5 copies of the book that day. I was like beside myself that was his experience. That's what he thought he needed to do to get a copy. I mean, I was giving them away anyway. But it was such a profound moment because the whole audience leapt to their feet with a standing ovation for him and for me. And you really, those moments, as much as we think that, that would make me feel good, it actually brought me to tears, and I felt like a little kid. I felt so humbled, and I felt so, oh God, I felt like a baby. I felt like I don't know how I got to be so blessed. I don't know how I can stand here and have that kind of response when I'm just a normal person. And it was so humbling. It was a life-changing experience for me. And as I try and teach people, I do teach people how to speak in public, and it's a message that I try to convey, that it's never going to be the ego that stands and takes applause, because it's just not how you feel. You just feel so humbled and grateful that, for me, I felt so grateful that I had been blown up and that none of those other people had to go through it. And I was more than happy to have taken one on behalf of the planet, so that then the planet can be okay. I don't think I'm explaining that well, but
no, you are. And I think, like you said, then you're an ordinary person, and you may see yourself in that way, but you've been through an extraordinary experience. And what's even more extraordinary than the experience that you've gone through is exactly what your dad directed you or helped you, encouraged you to do, and that is take that and use that to the benefit of other, and that's extraordinary. So you're not an ordinary person, Carren Smith. You're quite extraordinary. And I've just got, it's not so much a question here, but it's from Jenny in Chinchilla. And she's heard your story and she's got goosebumps, and she thinks your strength is amazing, and thanks you for, for opening up and sharing this for us, because I think that's the thing. And I think the best thing about this, one of the best things about this webinar series is we get the opportunity for listeners to have the privilege to hear from you, so that whatever they're going through in their journey, and as you said, it might all feel the same, it shows them that there is a way. And that what I've loved about your story is the reality of it and the rawness of it, that you didn't wake up 2 weeks after Bali and losing your partner and everything else and suddenly go, oh, I'm better now. It took you 6 years to really work through that. Tell me about your husband, Matt, and how you met him and the influence that I guess having that person has played on your journey.
Wow. So Matt is, I met Matt about a year or so before the bombing. He was friends. Yeah, he was friends with all of my friends and Greg's friends. And so we crossed paths, but he lived on the Gold Coast. And there was nothing between the two of us at all. I just, met him in passing with a bunch of other people, and that was the end of that. And when I went through the bombing, I remember Matt and a handful of his friends on the Gold Coast sent me flowers and beautiful cards and beautiful messages. And when I had come out of the hospital, it was about a month or two later, a friend of ours actually passed away on a motorcycle accident. And it was at that point that I felt like I was just about to crack. So I jumped on a bus and trekked up to the Gold Coast and went to a health retreat. Back then it was called the Golden Door Health Retreat.
I know the Golden Door very well. Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious me. I'm so disappointed it doesn't still exist there. But I went to the health retreat, and then I arranged to see Matt and a couple of his friends when I'd finished at the Golden Door. I was there for 7 days, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, Lou. I still can't even tell you what it was. I can't put a label. But when I caught up with him and his friends, there was a safety that I felt in him, that whether anything happened with us or not, it wasn't even in my thought processes. It was just I had to be in his company because I felt safe. And when I was at home in Cronulla, the place was so full of memories, and it was so full of pain and suffering that I couldn't actually go anywhere without experiencing, flashbacks and pictures of Jodie and pictures of Greg, and I couldn't find peace. So I called my boss and said, I don't think I'm coming back to Sydney. I think I'm going to stay in Queensland. Can I get a job up here? And she said, well, you'll have to drop a lot of dollars to get the job up in Brisbane, but if you want it, it's yours. So I took it, and I never went home. I went home in the February. So that was in the December I went to the Golden Door. I came home in the February, packed up my unit. Matt actually came down with me, and by this stage we had agreed that there was something between us, but I was still very I really wasn't ready for anything, and he was just, my goodness me. I mean, you show me a man that would take on a woman like me, and I'll show you Hercules. Like, that is, an absolute godsend of a person. And he has been by my side every day. He's never faltered. And I have ridden a roller coaster emotionally.
Yeah.
But he is as solid as they come. He's consistent. And 2 years ago, we got married.
Oh,
I know.
That's beautiful.
I am so blessed, and it makes me want to cry every time I think about how lucky I am. Yeah.
But he's lucky too, and he obviously saw something despite everything you were going through. He obviously saw your true self in there, and I'm sure he wakes up every day and thinks he's a lucky one. So
we could sow that seed, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So, Carren, I have to ask, do you stay in touch with any of the other survivors from Bali?
I can't. No, I don't. Again, and I just think so much time has passed now, but I couldn't be around anybody else that was suffering. And, even up in, we've just had the 20-year anniversary, in October. I was asked that question a lot, but even looking at some of the footage that was shot for the anniversary in this new Netflix series or Stan series that's on about the Bali bombing, I can't go there. I can't. It's not conducive to my own emotional and psychological fortitude. I've come so far, and for me to revisit any of that or to feel anybody else is suffering around that same experience, it's not. I've tried. It's not great.
Just out of curiosity, when Netflix and that do these shows, do they reach out to you guys first to ask your thoughts on this?
No. Yeah. No. Unless you're part of the show.
Right.
But no, they don't reach out to the families either, which actually I think is pretty poor form, because I, look at Jodie's mum, who has actually lost a son as well as Jodie since the bombing, different circumstances. But that woman, to lose 2 out of 3 kids, and I also know that she had lost another child when they were younger. But, that how does a family and how does a person watch something like that, or even know that and their friends are talking about it, and now she's got to find the strength again to relive it. I think it's in very poor taste. That's just my I get that people need to stay educated about what Australia has been through. So that part I totally understand, because we never want to forget. And there's a whole generation now of kids that have no idea what, like even my hairdresser, because I've got a very lumpy head under here where I've got a metal plate. My hairdresser said, "Oh, what happened there?" And I said, "I was in the Bali bombing." And she said, "What's that?"
Wow.
So, she's 22, so how would she know?
Yeah.
I think that there is a whole generation of kids that need to be kept aware of it, but
perhaps not through an entertainment portal, maybe not. Anyway, so Carren, we've got gosh, could talk forever. 20 minutes left. You've got this whole new life now. You're an author, you're a speaker, you're a coach, and everything else. Do you have little rituals that you do every day, or say that 80-20 rule, that keeps you centered in yourself and keeps you grounded? Because I'm sure like there will be triggers that are always going to come. I'd love to hear some of those.
So you're spot on. I do. And the easiest way for me to put it is that I live a very, very deliberate life. Meaning I live a very deliberate life in that I do my best, and I'm committed to mastering a deliberate life many, many years ago. So I like to think that I'm pretty good at it now, and there are very few things that will come across my path that will steer me off the path.
So can you define for us before you start what a deliberate life means?
For sure. So it's actually really simple, straightforward, is that every moment that's occurring, I am very deliberate in that moment. Like in this moment here with you, I'm very deliberate. I know exactly what I'm saying as I'm saying it, even though I'm not looking and I'm not preparing and I'm not scripting, because I'm with you and I'm right here and I'm paying attention. My moment with you is incredibly deliberate. My moment going on inside of my skin bag is incredibly deliberate. When we get off the webinar, I'll probably go and make myself a cup of tea. But the moment I turn this webinar off and I get up, the getting up will be deliberate. The walking to the kitchen will be deliberate. The making of the tea will be deliberate. The heating up of the lunch will be deliberate. So I live an incredibly deliberate life. And for the most part, when I'm brushing my teeth and eating my breakfast, those are things that are not earth-shattering. But when it's pertinent is when there's a challenge, when there's something that crosses my expecting, when there's something that, like I look at life like a heartbeat. When things are great, they're great, but when they're crap, holy dooly, jeepers creepers, that drop like a heartbeat, when it drops, man, it drops. It's not delicate. So I kind of look at it, I go, life is not delicate, so I better be deliberate. I feel like it's, you're not alive unless there's the up and the down. If it's a straight line, if you're flat lining, there's no life. And
so
as much
true.
as we wish, and as much as we wish that life was always awesome, you'd still be flatlining. You'd just be flatlining in the bliss,
Flatlining in the bliss. That sounds an oxymoron, doesn't it?
Kind of sounds great to me, but you're still flatlining. There's no life in that. But life, for most of us, occurs in the up and the down of it's like the heartbeat, the rhythm of life. So if we allow life to be random, then we have no control over the rhythm of the beat. Whereas if we're deliberate, then we're participating in the rhythm of the beat. And this was one of the commitments that I made to myself after the bombing, when I thought, well, I'm here. I've been given a second chance, so I better make my life bloody amazing. Because if I'm here, there's a day that's going to occur when I'm going to land up in a box and I'm not going to be here. So what am I going to do between now and then?
Yeah.
And is life random for me, like it has been, because the bombing occurred when I was 32.
Okay.
So am I going to be random? Is my life going to be random like it had been for the 32 years beforehand? Or was my life going to be deliberate where I say, I'm participating with life, I call the shots, my skin bag, my piece of life, and it will be the way I want it to look. There will always be challenges I can't control, but how I participate with the challenge is going to determine how that challenge plays out for me. If I take it as something random and go, oh my God, why me? Or, oh, this is terrible, then I'm really going to suffer.
Yeah.
Because I've got a great frame of reference for suffering. I've got great experience in suffering. I can go there really easily. But if I am willing to acknowledge that the challenge that comes my way or the pain or whatever it is that comes my way and go, right, I'm participating with this. You are not random. You've occurred in my life. I don't know where you came from and I don't know why, but you're there. So I'm going to participate with you. I'm going to hang out with you. I'm going to work with you and I'm going to milk you for everything you can give me. You make me a bigger, better. I'm going to make sure of it. And so that then on the other side of the challenge or the pain or the suffering, I'm a better person because of it, rather than sitting in resistance and wishing it away. Because life only occurs when it's beating, and the beating is the up. So if we think that we can escape it, we're delusional. So we can't escape it. It is what it is. Start to dance with the natural rhythm. And that for me is what living a deliberate life is. And it's being as deliberate as we can in as many moments as we can.
That's amazing. I think that's a lot. That's isn't that Eckhart Tolle who has quite a similar philosophy to that as well?
I have not read his book, but I will one day. But just totally, his power of now, being in the now moment, staying in the present moment. Jeepers creepers, like, could you get anything more simple? Yet it's almost as if that's the meaning of life.
It is. And I think, without getting too political and everything, but you must see, and I know in your coaching work, you must coach, a variety of ages and people as well. But when you're talking about living deliberately, and yet so much of our lives is done so mind-numbingly through scrolling and almost as an escape to live in the moment. I think, I don't know what the answer is, but it's kind of creating a sense of numbness, especially across a younger generation who, something that you've said a lot and Kirk said, and I know with Drought Angels, I talk a lot, is about, through this resilience, you build strength. If you run away from your problems and if you run away from the not so great stuff in life, how are you ever going to be able to face anything if you're constantly numbing it and running away? So I think that's something that it's going to be interesting in the next 5-10 years, looking at the results of this for our generation and our kids.
Well, I think it's definitely different to what we are used to. But what I can also say that's quite encouraging is even though they are completely distracted with technology, there is a different kind of mentality amongst the younger generation these days. And I'll tell you what I mean. I got a call from a client. Her son woke up and said, "Mum, I feel like life is a game, and it's like there's a controller somewhere, and the controller is making everything happen. So I just want to jump out of the game for a quick minute and go and meet the controller and find out what he's doing." And the kid's 9.
Wow.
I know. She rang me and she said, "Okay, I don't even know what to do with this. You're going to have to talk to my son." But what I thought was so interesting about that is that even though they are distracted with technology, It's almost as if they've come in wired with what we've been searching for our whole lives, is that meaning of life, that controller, that central self. And that was my answer to him. I said, don't for a second think that the controller is separate to you. You are the controller and you are the. That's right. So the key is, don't just know yourself as the character. Discover who you are as the controller, because it's the controller that's participating. But I think and that was really encouraging to me, because like you, I've been quite nervous because they are completely distracted. And I think that for us as adults, we can only lead by example. And I think for us, we're either distracted or we're participating. Yeah. So if we participate with life, do it deliberately. Don't let life be random. Don't let life be random. Be deliberate. Be with it. Be with whatever you're in the moment. Be with it. No matter what it is, be with it. And then you can participate and control more of your responses, because you're more present rather than absent-minded and on autopilot.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I think it's probably a practice that all of us watching need to take on a little bit more, because as soon as you say it, it's like, yeah, that's right. But I think the more you do it, it's like everything. If you invest in yourself in that and you're deliberate about being it, then I think slowly it will occur a little bit more. Carren, I just wanted to ask you before we wrap up, relationship about angels. You know, we're doing this series. We want to reach out to everyone, but we know what our friends out in the farms, regional areas have been through the last few years. Do you have any relationship to the, you know, you look like a city girl, and I know you've sort of South Africa and Sydney, and now you're up in good old Queensland. But do you have your own personal relationship with regional areas of Australia?
I'm a fan of regional Australia, simply because I feel it's very much the salt of the earth. And we miss, and I, if you haven't kind of noticed, I'm I'm a humanitarian. Yeah. So for me, I feel very connected to the earth, to the land, to the trees, to the ocean. I'm very connected to that, and that's where I find my recharge comes from. So whenever I do to go out bush, or to go into the mountains, or to go bushwalking, or to, you know, go to Outback up in Darwin, or one of my favorite places is actually Hay.
Hey.
Yeah, I know. It's so remote, but it's so beautiful and so expansive. And there's wineries there, which is an absolute bonus. Which I just loved. But I find I live in the city and always have done. And Matt is a city person, but he loves the beach because he's into boats and jet skis and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's animals, it's the bushland, and it's being out and amongst nature. So I find myself there 2 or 3 times a week in order to recharge the batteries. I totally understand our farmers and the connection they have to their animals and the connection they have to the land and why it means so much to them. I absolutely get it. And the farmers who are so connected that, you know, I understand that they're running a business, but the land is where the passion lies. Those are the farmers that I feel like I almost feel like I know them, you know?
Yeah. It is so beautiful. And we talked about this a lot, but it comes up a lot in conversations with drought angels and our farmers, when people might say, well, if things are tough, just pack up the farm and move to the city. But they can't. Like you said, it's in their blood. It's their life. It's their, it's generational. It's an intrinsic part of who they are, and it's their home. And, we want to do everything we can, and drought angels are just incredible, and the work that they do to keep the farmers on the farm, which then allows us city folk to get the food that we eat off the table. And I think that's something we can never take for granted. So we've just got a few now. Is there any parting words of wisdom on the wings of resilience that you want to share with us? You've been absolutely amazing. We could talk to you all day. Such a incredible story. And, I'm sure most people watching will be quite in awe that, you're sitting here today talking about this with such composure and calmness and realness. And it's just amazing. So thank you for sharing your journey. Is there any last things that you'd like to share?
I think the only thing that I would like to share over and above what we've already spoken about is that, it's for those that are listening, if you've had any suffering or you are suffering, please understand that that is a natural part of life. And it's not the first time you've suffered. You've suffered before and you survived it. It may have been difficult, but you definitely survived it. So draw on the evidence of what your life has given you in terms of what you already have inside for resilience. You don't need to go out and find it somewhere else. It's already always in there. So reach down and see within yourself that you are the center of the universe. You are the center of your own universe. You've been here. You've done this before. You will do it again. And you can pull yourself out. You can pull yourself through. And on the other side of it is an extraordinary version of you that the people around you and the world, depending on how far you want to go, we're waiting for you. We're waiting for you to work through the challenge and the suffering that life has presented you with right now. We're waiting for you to work through it. And we're cheering you on. We're right beside you. And if you could hear champagne corks popping and us with cheerleaders all around you, then you would know that that's actually what's. So take a big, deep breath. Trust yourself. And just take one tiny step. Don't look too far ahead. Just one tiny step. Just even another breath. Just one more breath. That's all you got to do. And then here's another breath. That's all you got to do. And pretty soon, you'll have taken 100 breaths and 100 steps and then 1,000 breaths and 1,000 steps, and you'll be on the other side of it. So trust that you can get through it. You know you can.
I love it. Thank you so much. And that statement, draw on the evidence, that's gold because it's true. So thank you so much today for coming on. You've got we've got Rebecca Bell, Tim. People are just saying thank you so much for sharing your story. We're going to follow you, obviously, and hear what you're doing and where you are. And we're going to close now, and I think we're going to bring Mitch back up, General Manager of Drought Angels, if that's okay. I can see him sitting there, just to say a few words, but we really deeply appreciate your time and honesty this morning, Carren.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Carren. And on behalf of our CEO and founder, Tash Johnson, I just want to say a huge thank you for your contribution today. I particularly loved your chrysalis analogy and your heartbeat analogy. I'll take that away today. But today really wouldn't have been possible, thanks, if it wasn't for our sponsors, the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund and the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation. A few other thank yous. Lou, thank you so much for emceeing again. It's wonderful. Really appreciate it. And all the people that have joined us today online through Facebook and YouTube, thank you so much for joining with us. We just value your support. And obviously, if you've missed parts of today and you'd like to rewatch, or you'd like to share parts of the seminar, of the webinar today, then it'll be on our YouTube page at the end of today, early tomorrow.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Going to go and make a deliberate cup of tea now.
Let's do it.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mitch. We'll see you next week on Wednesday with Shane Bird, another amazing speaker. So take care, everyone, and go live that deliberate life. Thank you.